welcome to the RRP Airlines. We're obviously here in the Mile High Club with Adam Fitzpatrick for Behind the Headphones. So please put your phone on aeroplane mode and we'll get talking to the We Are the Brave boss. So let's talk about your early life. What was it like growing up in the south of England? Sort of early interactions with music, that sort of thing.
Yeah, growing up down there was pretty good, really. I mean, I was sort of council estate, really growing up, so lots of knocking about outside and hanging around with the bigger kids, sort of thing, you know. But in terms of music, I guess from my younger age, I was buying tape packs quite a lot from Movement Records, which is actually not far. Well, it's not there anymore, but it wouldn't be far from where we are. Before I could go into clubs and stuff, buying rave packs, listening to them at school in your Walkman, trying to like, you know, you got your earphone poking out your blazer, sort of thing. And then from that sort of developed into my sort of passion of wanting to sort of get more into music. So I bought a pair of turntables at like 14.
And you mentioned rave packs there. What was the rave culture like? Were you involved with that? What was the rave scene like in the south of England? Was it a big thing?
Still lots of illegal parties, lots of woods parties and stuff like that. A lot of it was sort of, I was probably just a bit too young to sort of get involved in some of that, but I was more so kind of aware of it, you know, like there was obviously kids that are a bit older in school doing that sort of stuff. And all the sort of hardcore, drum and bass, jungle, all that sort of scene was quite big down here. You had obviously people like Stu Jane, Hixie and all that from the sort of hardcore scene that lived sort of quite close to down here. And they actually worked in the record shops as well. So a lot of that sort of culture was always bubbling from down here from quite a young age. I think that sort of influenced all my sort of sound into the scene, all that rave stuff. I still play a lot of that sort of stuff now.
And do you think was all the rave culture, was it a rave that you went to that sort of you knew you were hooked and that was like, right, I want to be a DJ now and get into it?
Yeah, I guess that came from going to Slinky in Bournemouth. My cousin, actually, I hadn't seen him for just due to sort of auntie and uncle having a divorce, so I didn't get to see him much. He'd come around my house when I was about 13 or 14, saw that I had a pair of turntables and invited me to go down to Slinky in Bournemouth with him. And that was sort of rest of history from there, really. As soon as I walked into that club, seeing sort of lights for the first time, people raving for the first time and experiencing all that sort of stuff, that was when I was like, okay, this is something I want to be pursuing a lot more.
And how did you sort of then, like, once you made that decision, how did you then sort of go about getting to where you are now, I guess? Like, what was it like? Did you go on a music course, or how did you get there?
I had, as I say, I had some turntables anyway, so I was going into like Movement Records and HMV and buying the 3 for a tenner and stuff. I was sort of buying everything at that stage. My record collection was pretty sort of, you know, from the 99 trance sort of scene right through to hardcore stuff, drum and bass. I didn't really know what I was going to be doing and what I was going to be playing, so I was just drawing on all the influences that I was into and buying all those sort of records. And then sort of, you know, from that, I guess, I went from, I guess it was about 16, 17 from clubbing. I then went into a music course at BTEC, South Downs College for music technology. And I only really did that for about 8 or 9 months. It was a 3-year course. But during that time, I got a load of studio equipment on finance from Digital Village, which is a shop in Southampton that used to be there. I had all that equipment, started learning how to use all that with my best mate, Dave Robertson, Reset Robot. And I dropped out of the course because basically, I think about 8 months in, we had our first record signed. So I was like, you know what, I'm just cracking on with it now. So we were like, what? I was rather, he stuck it out and he stayed there for like 3 or 4 years. But I had my record out was a track called Feel the Friction on Toolbox Records. I think it's 2002, like a hard house sort of label. And I think when I got that signed, I had the sort of inkling that I was like, okay, I'm not going to stick it out at college because I'm already sort of, in my head, I was like, I've made it, I've got a record out. And it just sort of went on from there, really. I guess the less time I was at college, the more time I was at home playing on my own software and sort of developing a sound. And it's just sort of, you know, stumbles on from there. I mean, I've still adding to my studio now.
And I guess, so developing that sound and then also developing your fan base, how, obviously Southampton doesn't spring to mind as like a music hub.
Yeah.
Like it's
not a mecca.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like I don't think people travel from South America to come to Southampton.
No, exactly.
But maybe they do.
Yeah.
But how did you find that? How did you develop Did you develop a fan base here and then sort of transport that to London, or how did where?
I think mine was kind of backward. I think I probably was more successful elsewhere and built up fan bases in other parts of the world, and then got noticed more in Southampton as, oh, he's a local boy and he's doing really well. You know, that sort of way, rather than building up a sort of crew locally and then sort of being spotted and being like, okay, these guys have got something cool, and it growing that way, which does happen in a lot of scenes as we know now. But I think I had it the opposite way. I think I was probably playing, because I was obviously quite early on, I was playing with Drumcode and stuff. I was in Berlin a lot, I was doing Berghain a lot, I was doing all those sort of more Tresors, the techno vibe out there, and that solidified my sort of techno status, I think, really. And from that, other parts of the world were sort of starting to take notice, and I think that was what drew me back to sort of doing stuff in Southampton, because the sound that I generally produced wasn't a big thing down here. Southampton was a lot more drum and bass, it was a lot more like R&B, a lot more student orientated clubs, so there wasn't really a place for me. If I was playing here, it'd be smaller parties and stuff, so little pockets of people.
Do you feel like, as you said, like I'm growing up in the southeast of England myself, like it was very drum and bass orientated, and so when you were, like, I guess, sort of starting out, did you feel like you're taking a risk a bit? And is that something you still do in your sets? Is like,
yeah, I guess the only risk would be that you don't know how it's going to get perceived in, like, when you're playing out locally. Luckily, my group of friends I was making music with and hanging out with, we all had similar tastes. I was always a bit more to the harder edge of stuff. So, you know, when I was more listening to sort of techno and acid techno and the Chris Liberator, Stay Up Forever, all that sort of sound, when some of my other friends might have been more into the sort of Radio 1, Pete Tong recording essential mixes and that sort of stuff. But we did all connect in that sense, because it's all, obviously, you know, we were young, we were sort of impressionable on any sort of music. But in terms of risk, I guess I was always a bit more edgy then, and I think now I still take risks now. I think I still try and drop tracks that people don't expect, or edit stuff that people aren't really going to expect and stuff like that.
And so as an artist, do you think it's important to, of course people come to see you for certain reasons, but also do you think it's the artist's job to push things in a new direction? I sort of almost educate people as well, but at the same time reward what they're there for.
Yeah, definitely. I think a lot of the sort of educational stuff, you can, especially now, I end up looking retrospective of music. So sort of I'll play stuff that might be occasionally 20 years old or whatever, and you'll still get people trying to Shazam a track idea. So that's educating the younger kids in maybe stuff that they've never heard before, which is exciting for me, because, you know, as well as doing it with brand new music and new artists and new sort of, you know, pushing stuff into the forefront, you're also educating them on some of the older stuff that maybe they didn't know, or maybe their bigger brothers and sisters or parents even were used to play. So I quite like that aspect of it as well.
And what about this is obviously, like, I don't know if it's a controversial topic, but this identification of music groups, Shazam, all these things is especially in the UK, is very much a part of the going out now. People putting their phone up. But then you go to, like, Berlin, obviously a classic case, Amsterdam, Belgium, these even South America, there's not, the phones suddenly disappear, or they're less common. Do you think that's an issue with the UK scene, or is it just part of the evolution of dance music?
I think in the UK it's definitely changed more than it has in other cities. We always have a sort of almost like a running joke where you can almost see, when you sometimes play some of the UK festivals, as soon as you start, all you see is camera lights. Do you know what I mean? Everyone's like getting that first sort of intro or whatever, and then you're going, as you say, like Berlin, South America, Argentina, places I play a lot, and you might not even see a phone come out. Do you know what I mean? Unless it's someone asking where their mate is, or but not in a musical sense, using a phone for a phone's actual use rather than, you know, filming stuff. So there is, it's definitely changed a bit in the UK. There's a lot more of that, but I still think that runs into the culture of people either wanting memories of the event, wanting to know what tracks are. That's never changed. You know, before you had people doing it on their phone videos, you used to have people on forums asking for what tracks are and that sort of stuff. And, you know, even back when I was first DJing or first wanting to find out music, people like Sasha, I'd go and see Sasha in Digweed, and they'd be playing an acetate that I might have found the name out of 4 years after, you know. So you're always searching. I just think now it's a lot more easier because of the wide sort of reach of the internet.
And it's like, it's just a speedier process.
Yeah, exactly. Someone posting a video saying what track is this, or they ask the artist.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of the time you get a lot of messages and it's people saying, oh, what's this
this?
track?
Yeah.
You know, I filmed you playing this track or whatever.
Well, I guess it has its benefits as well. Like now, it's so competitive as well. Like it is a great promotional tool as well, and I guess it also gives you access to markets that traditionally, back in time, you wouldn't have necessarily been able to get to because people just wouldn't know that you existed.
Yeah, 100%, and that even falls into the sort of same thing as people used to moan about illegal downloads and illegal streams and stuff like this. But sometimes that's the only way your music could get to certain territories. Whether if they're not buying it but they're streaming it or they're downloading it on what do you stuff like LimeWire, Napster, all these sorts of things. You know what I mean?
1,000 viruses.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's to be mental. But those sort of sites were basically opening up territory, especially for me, places like Mexico, Colombia, South America, Russia, stuff like that. That's how they were experiencing my music. So you got to take it with that, I think, sometimes, and accept that that's how it is.
Yeah, this is it. I think it's just part of a natural evolution.
Definitely.
You can't. It's nice to sometimes say, it was good like that, but it's actually, you can't change some of these things.
And all the video stuff, like, as you say, with the promotional aspects of it, we all use that. So, I mean, everyone loves that video of a track completely going off. We use it as an asset when you're trying to promote the release and all that sort of stuff. So it's a double-edged sword. If you had no footage of you playing out and no cool videos and no this and that, but everyone else is doing it, you sort of feel like you're falling through the crack a bit. Did you even play? Yeah. You get these Instagram DJs, sometimes you wouldn't know whether they play out or not. Do you know what I mean? I mean, like sort of up-and-coming people, because there's no footage of stuff. So sometimes people want that, to use that. But
do you think, so obviously it tends to be, if we're talking about the UK, the bigger venues where you get these floods of white light from the cameras.
Yeah.
So for me as a clubber, like my favourite venue to go and party is Sub Club.
Yeah.
Because it's like a low roof, it's sweaty. You don't even know if you're looking at the DJ booth or a wall of speakers.
Yeah.
Like, for me, that's the best place to party. Do these phones, can you feel the change in energy when you go to these different places, or is the energy still there? It's just a different energy?
I think from my point of view, the energy usually is still there, and sometimes sort of adds to it. Sometimes you know, it's a bit of excitement, but yeah, certainly clubs like that are wicked. That's one of my favourite places to play, and hopefully I'll get to play there again. You know.
Well, so do you think do you think people can make it purely on their musical output now, or do you have to be the full package?
I would like to think, obviously, from being a sort of 90s, you know, growing up, being an 80s child, growing up in the 90s and playing music now, having the ability to look back and see what it used to be like when it was just about music. When back in the days when you wouldn't necessarily know who the DJ is, he's tucked away in the corner and you can just hear the music. Sometimes you wouldn't even see the DJ, you know, it's just about music. Now, it's more about, I personally think it's, when you say the whole package, but more the personality that goes with the music and the profile and the this and the that, so people almost they promote themselves as a person, and then the music is something that they do as a secondary thing, you know what I mean?
And it's the same with, like, I don't know when it first started, but now this whole thing of selling tickets to the backstage.
Yeah,
for me, it lost, when that happened, I lost a little bit of what clubbing was about, because you're meant to be on the dance floor. You're not meant to be. And now you see like these big like events like off Sonar and that, where you have big sort of staged events.
Yeah.
These events, but I guess maybe it comes down to like having to hit certain margins now, because everything's more. But personally, I'd like to see a shift of getting people on the dance floor and listening.
Yeah, 100%. Like there's a few clubs that are like no VIP service, no kind of backstage pass, no guest list, no standing behind the DJ, all that sort of stuff, just to promote. Because, you know, if we're all honest, if you know someone, you're going to go and hang out with them. Yes, it's nice to go and stand in the booth and be backstage and maybe get free drinks and not have to sort of go and queue at the bar for whatever. That's obviously great. Yeah. But we all know that the experience is when you're stood in front of the DJ with everyone else, sweaty, shoulder to shoulder, you know, sharing a bottle of water with a guy that you've never met next to you or whatever. Do you know what I mean? That's what it was about, not the sort of VIP culture. And that also goes back to what we were saying about the whole package and booking people on just music ability on what they make. You'll even get promoters now booking people on the amount of likes someone's got, the amount of, you know what I mean? Yeah. None of that has anything to do with music.
Relevance, yeah.
And if we're all honest, some of the best music that you hear will be people you'll never get to
yeah,
meet.
with
or
the
never would have
200
met.
likes. And
Or
I don't even have a Facebook page.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, or completely not even on social media. Do you know what I mean? So it's, then all there is to focus on is the music.
And it was before lockdown and all of this, there's a very fertile illegal scene anyway.
Yeah.
And I think there's been a bit of contention now with what's going on, but a lot of the promoters that were doing the illegal stuff beforehand aren't actually the ones promoting stuff now. It's actually other people sort of going, I'm jumping into that space.
Yeah.
But do you think we're going to see a more shift towards these sort of underground parties as well? Or?
I definitely think if history repeats itself in any way, we certainly will. I mean, even back in the 90s when all the off the M25 illegal raves, all that sort of stuff, that was a push against the government and a push against let us go and do our own thing, a push against Thatcher, and a push against sort of, we want to go out and party and you're not going to stop us. That at the moment, that sort of conversation sort of bubbles on people's kind of, when people are tweeting and posting about the current situation, there's a lot of, it's a known fact the government sort of left our industry behind in terms of support for clubs and for bar workers, for lighting techs, for sound tech, all these people. So there's already something bubbling of people getting frustrated, and that will have to go somewhere. I mean, the difference with then and now is then was just because you wanted to party, whereas now you're also risking like people's lives and stuff. So there's a limit. So the ballpark has definitely changed. So,
do you think people today, specifically sort of artists trying to break through, do you think that they want too much too soon, or not want expect too much too soon? Because I feel there's almost like a roadmap that people follow. They're like, right, get my decks. I'm gonna go play at this club, and that means I'm gonna get signed to this label.
Yeah, and then the touring is gonna start.
Yeah,
I mean, I think there's an aspect of expectation with any new artist. A lot of it, I personally would put down to excitement and almost, in the politest way, like naivety of maybe being new in the scene and how things work and stuff. There's a lot of times you sign new artists and they're going to be asking one of their friends that's maybe already in the scene or someone about, does this contract make sense or is this right? And there's a lot of things that that come into play which can make people be nervous about stuff. But certainly I think in terms of exposure and where they think their career is going to go, there's no shortcuts in this scene. I mean, I've been doing this for probably near on 20 years, which makes me feel well. There's no wood to touch, but yeah, touch wood, I'll keep on doing it. You know what I mean? But yeah, I think especially with social media and with like that sort of exposure and reach on the internet, you can, as an emerging artist, make yourself look bigger than you are, and that loads more is going on. That you're flying everywhere and you're doing this, you're doing that, and this gig's happening, that gig's happening. And that will feed into other younger people thinking that, okay, cool, once I have a record out, I'm going to tour everywhere, and then I'm going to be on every festival, and then I'm going to have an album come out, and that's amazing. Obviously, that's the approach that you'll want to get on that trajectory, but it doesn't always happen that way. Or if it does, it isn't.
It's an exception rather than it.
And if it does happen and fast for some people, definitely an exception. But on other people, if it happens, there's got to be a longevity line that you should sort of take rather than these spikes.
So you've got We Are the Brave as well, your label.
Yeah.
And that there's a mixed bag of I'd say established talent.
Yeah.
And then we've got some like younger guys on there that are breaking through.
Yeah.
As a label, do you think it's your responsibility to nurture young talent, and how difficult, I guess, is that when it's as competitive as it is?
Yeah, I mean, they're the future at the end of the day, and a lot of the, as I say all the time, a lot of the music I'm playing in sets when people are trying to idea or wanting to find out what it is, a lot of that's coming from the new and up and coming people. So I want to be pushing that music, and I want to be pushing it on Brave. The whole point of setting that label up was to sort of, try and rip the rule book up and do things a bit differently, and maybe sort of, promoting the younger talent a lot more. But I do think it's still important to sort of, help them grow, and that's why we've got the little management company and stuff like that. Try and look after people a bit more, We're not a label that generally would have someone on for a release, especially a younger or up and coming person, and then that's it. I'd like to sort of see some sort of progression. Yeah. So if we've signed someone for a debut release or whatever, it's not like, okay, cheers, and then off you go. Yeah. You want to be, most of the time as well, because we're leading back to that excitement thing of people wanting stuff to happen fast. You'll get a great release from an up and coming DJ producer, and then as soon as that one's kind of been signed, pen to paper, and you start sort of working on that release, they're already, here's the next one.
Yeah.
It's like, you're like, come on. I love having the music because I can play it, but you also got to sort of manage expectations in the fact that once you've had a release out, it's not next month is the next one. It's because it's exciting, and that's exciting for me, seeing other people's excitement.
So with like signing this new stuff as well, what advice would you give to, like, obviously with We Are the Brave as your label, what advice would you give to someone trying to get signed? Like, because I'd imagine you get quite a lot of demos. Is there a top tip to like making it, at least getting it heard?
Being as unique as possible, I think, personally. The stuff that we pick up, the stuff that makes my ears prick up is when I hear something that excites me that I've not really heard. Either there's something about the track, the way it's put together, or the production of it, or whatever sounds are used in it, or the style. There's a lot of things that will make you be like, this record's wicked, it's different. So for me, it's like the uniqueness. You get so many people that will send, not just me, will send loads of people demos, and it's like they're writing for the label, so they're trying to make stuff that sounds like your last 10 releases, thinking that's the sound that they sign. But what people forget is the sound that we're releasing, and those sort of records we've probably had for 8, 10, 12 months sometimes. So for me, the freshness, making something unique that isn't like everything else, is what will usually attract me to it. Yeah. And all the biggest records that you can think of, some of your favourite music, you don't like it because it sounds like everything else. You like it because it's different to everything else, and it stands out. If anything, once that's out, stuff starts to sound like it, because people replicate it all the time. But sending me something that is like going to excite me and be something different is a lot more effective for getting me to listen to it than sending me something that's just like, okay, that could be any record. Do you know what I mean? And
so I guess that, do you think, and this is more of like all artists now again, do you think as an artist you reflect the sort of the mood of society? Is that like when you're sat in the studio now, do you think the music output you're putting is reflective of the mood?
I guess only in the sense that I guess a lot of people we're all in a similar feeling at the moment. Certainly the start of lockdown and stuff like that. When I was in the studio, I couldn't make 4/4 music. I couldn't make techno. I couldn't make a lot of that sort of stuff. I could, but I didn't choose to, because my mood wasn't thinking about clubs, because it was more so all the clubs have been closed down or they're all shut. I wasn't in that headspace, so I was more writing ambient stuff, and I've got an alias called Estrange, so I was working on a lot of music like that, which is not ambient, chill sort of stuff, and representative of the mood. I think a lot of all of my sort of dance music-y stuff, probably even in terms of Spotify and stuff, must have took a dip in listens, because people were listening to stuff that was more chilled. And
if you're at home with your locked down with your mum, you're not going to be blasting techno, are you?
So that definitely, in terms of like reflecting the society, sort of, I guess only in the sense that we may have all had a collective feeling that we're all a bit down, a bit somber, not really unsure what was coming in the future. So that did come across in my music. I mean, I'm working on an album at the moment. It's nearly finished now, but I've definitely noticed that the tracks I had before to the tracks I've got now, which are, obviously there's still some that are staying on the album, but the mood's changed on that. And I think initially I was worried about that, and I was thinking, do I want to be showing that? But an album should be reflective of how you are as an artist and the time that you've written it. So it should be representative of some of the feelings I've gone through over the last 6 months, I think. So I've left some of that stuff in there, but it's definitely changed. I mean, now I'm making a bit more, because I've got fed up with making other stuff. So I'm making bangers again now. But I mean, I definitely went through a period where my musical style did change quite a bit in terms of my output.
And so it sort of leads me on to the next question, which is, do you think like music started off as raving started off as quite a counterculture movement?
Yeah.
And we've spoken already about sort of this bubbling sort of almost tension with what's going on. Do you think music should be used as a protest platform? Do you, because also if you look at things like in Georgia with I can never pronounce the name, but in Georgia, like there was obviously the big protest about the. Do you think music plays a role in protesting, or maybe not protesting but changing opinion and
yeah, I
pushing for
think so.
change.
But I think that also comes back to what we were just saying about when people are writing music, the mood of in which people's headspaces are in or whatever when they're writing that music will come across. And if everyone is feeling angsty and edgy and a bit frustrated with stuff, that will come out in the music. And ultimately that then should spark a bit of a movement. You know, if everyone started writing real angry 140 BPM acid techno because they're really annoyed about stuff, and then the next like 6 months that was everyone's output, it's gonna feel a bit aggy and angsty and almost a bit of a, you know, fuck you, we're gonna be, you know, that punk ethic of doing what we want again. You know what I mean?
Well, I guess so. Actually, I don't know because it don't make me. But I guess you don't actually set out to make music to protest, but it so happens that it transpires into that.
Yeah, the mood or the feeling will lead into that. Yeah, definitely. I mean, yeah, if everyone's feeling annoyed, you just generally that comes across in your music. You know, there's lots of times I'm sat in the studio, I think I'm sort of, you know, in one headspace, and by the end of the day, I'm like, no, it's gone a bit sideways. But that's what I mean. If that happens with a lot of people, then the output will reflect that, and then that will sort of tail off into something else.
Makes sense.
But,
all right, so what's been the hardest thing you've had to overcome in your career?
I guess learning how to stay in your own lane and not really be concerned about what everyone else is doing, and worrying that you're not here when someone else is there, you're not doing this when someone else is doing that. Do you know what I mean? And trying to be focused just on what you do and not be stressing out about everything else, you know. So I think social media's got a big part to play in that sort of stuff. You know, when, for example, if you're ill or you've got a weekend off and you're seeing videos of like people playing out, you get a bit like, you know what I mean?
Well, might not fit,
It's a lot. I think that and the mental health aspect of it. Do you know what I mean? Traveling a lot, being away from people, all that sort of stuff is quite difficult to get your head around. There's a lot of people as well that start in this industry and are thrown into touring and thrown into sort of situations they're not used to.
Well, I imagine it's quite daunting as an artist going around to these different countries, different places, having probably the same conversation 4 times a week.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you know what I mean? Hi mate, I'm a big fan, thanks for coming to play our party. It's no fault of the promoters or the people, but I imagine that's probably quite a tiring thing.
I think also like from that aspect as well, it's trying to stay polite and not by deliberately meaning to be harsh. I mean, everyone that knows me knows I sort of try and come across as sort of amicable as possible, but if you got right stuck in on a couple of gigs before, and then the third one you go to, you're playing a sort of 6-hour set or whatever, and you're generally knackered.
Yeah.
And it's a sort of same, you know, Groundhog Day conversations and stuff. With all the best intentions in the world, sometimes you might come across a little bit like whatever. Do you know what I mean? But it's not that because it's the promoter's fault or anything. It just is the tiredness of travelling, the anxiety of this and that, and that's a lot to get your head around, all that sort of stuff. And some people really struggle with that. I've got a lot of friends that, you know, that sort of, you know, interaction with other people is quite difficult for some reason, you know. But I think, you know, from being a seasoned touring DJ, you do sort of get used to that now.
I guess, have you defined or redefined how you look at success in the industry since you first started and now? Is that?
Yeah, I mean, I think you get swept up in it all, like, and not that you take things for granted, but I'm just working. I'm just glad to be working, doing stuff, doing something that I love. I'm never chasing success in terms of being this or being that. I'm just grateful to be able to play music to people and do something that I enjoy. And I think that for me, that's like the best success I can have. Really, is just to be able to keep working. You know, doesn't matter what level you're operating at. If you're lucky enough to do what I do, and there's millions of people that want to do this job, that's the buzz. I mean, that's what keeps me happy. As long as I'm playing music, or as long as I'm doing that sort of stuff and doing something that I've always wanted to do, that's enough for me, you know.
And so then, I guess my last question to you is, what are you most proud of in your life? Actually, not just music, like in your life.
Probably being a father to two kids, watching them grow up, and they're two beautiful kids, very good personalities, and their own little people, and it's amazing watching them develop
and those personalities. Somehow
managing to be a father and a husband and doing the job I do is pretty. Yeah, it can be taxing, but that's my proudest thing. Yeah, definitely seeing them two start to now take an interest in what I do and that as well. You know.
Do you think they'll be DJs? Or
well, I think if anything,
would you want them to be DJs?
Well, yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's hard, isn't it? I think they take an interest in it, and I'm sure at some point when they reach an age where we can...
Or the height of a set of decks.
Yeah, the height. Yeah, not the age, the height. As soon as they get that tall enough and we can get them into clubs and that, they're going to be... Yeah. It was going to change again, you know. But they may not be into that sort of stuff. Who knows? But I do think... One thing I haven't really experienced yet as a father with the kids on a certain level is them seeing me play to, say, 20,000 people at Creamfields or whatever, and being on the stage, look at them, just that
feeling.
That would be insane for them. They've been to you know, I've had them on my shoulders and I've played Mambo and Ibiza and that sort of stuff. But you know what that's like. It's obviously a different environment. But they've never come and seen me play a festival or seen me play a club and that sort of stuff. So that'd be mad when that happens. Yeah. You know, I'm sure they'll be pestering me for guest lists, and
drinks tokens, and extra wristbands, and all
that. Which is wicked. I mean, I'm looking forward to that sort of thing. But they are now starting to take an interest in what I do, and they watch little videos and get their Alexa to play my music and stuff like that. It's quite funny. I'll come in and something's on upstairs, and I'm like, "What is that?" And my little daughter's playing with Barbies with that on in the background. It's cool. That's a good feeling.
Techno Barbie.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It's a good feeling.
So before we wrap up, have you got anything coming out or things you want to point us in to look at? We Are the Brave, yourself.
Yeah, we've got a few. The label's been sort of firing on all cylinders. We've had loads of time to focus on that really. But in terms of sort of my output, I've just been doing a lot of collaborations over the sort of lockdown period. Got a new thing coming out of Reset Robot. I'm on We Are the Brave, which is a lot more sort of rawer techno sort of stuff, which is really cool. That's got an Infuse Letiago remix, which is wicked. And I've done another thing with Rebuke, Ultimate Distortion. Lots of people know that track because we've been playing it a lot, so there's a big hype on that one, and that's coming on Brave in November. That's going to have an Ilario Alicante remix. I've done a collaboration with A Vision from New York and Yusuf, which I'm going to do on Circus. And that come out of nowhere as well. Yeah. That's another sort of freeway thing, which is quite mad that it's got all of our personalities in it, but it sounds really cool. And that's
without actually being near each other.
Without being anywhere near each other, yeah. Sort of stems sending everywhere, yeah. So that's going to be pretty cool. That's coming out in December, and then onwards from that, I've got a few bits coming, some stuff on Drumcode, a new Records EP.
Nice.
And then we're leading into my album, and there's a lot of cool stuff coming on that, but we'll get to that when we're nearer the time, I guess.
Wicked. Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, no worries, man. Pleasure.
Cheers.
Thank you.
So once again, thanks for watching the RRP TV. We've been talking with Adam Fitzpatrick. You can subscribe somewhere on the bottom of this bar and catch us next week.